Necessary, adjective. Required to be done, achieved or present. Needed or essential. Determined, existing, or happening by natural laws or predestination. Inevitable. Essential, existent. I believe that these words best encapsulate the reasons for the writing of the book An Economic Interpretation of the United States Constitution by Charles A. Beard. I say essential because it is such a predominant aspect of the Constitution and needed to be further examined. I say existing because other historians had touched upon the idea and created the foundation for the theory that Beard would later develop. In his book, Beard aimed to prove that the Constitutional Convention was a meeting of ordinary human beings. He examined the career of every convention member and proved that most of them were invested in public securities and were only there to gain public credit. The majority of recorded history fails to interpret the writing of the Constitution through an economic lens. However, for Beard, it certainly shined through the parchment of the Constitution, and he brought it to the surface with ample evidence and thorough research. Although Beard was adamant about his interpretation of the Constitution, he was not trying to prove that it was definitive. He was the first to claim that his work was frankly fragmentary, due to a limited amount of time to research and put together all the pieces of the puzzle that he was creating. This meant that he intended to introduce a new way for people to look at the Constitution. Beard himself said in the preface, quote, "The following pages are designed to suggest new lines of historical research rather than to treat the subject in an exhaustive fashion. This apology is not intended as an anticipation of criticism from reviewers, but as a confession of fact," end quote. Therefore, he included this in his book to prove that although his work may not be 100% complete, he knew he had to publish it because the public needed to be exposed to what he had uncovered. When something exists, it has already been acknowledged. When it comes to the economic interpretation of the Constitution, the basis of this theory was created by James Madison in The Federalist, Volume 10. In this piece of writing by Madison, he proposes the idea that, quote, "the most common and durable source of factions has been the various and unequal distribution of property," end quote. From this theory, Beard was able to develop the idea that the theories of government which men entertain are emotional reactions to their property interests, which he stated on page 157. Beard's work was assessed by several other historians after its publication. With such a radical thesis, it is fair to say that historians would either support Beard or be in complete opposition. Howard Zinn wrote a 700-page book on American history through the eyes of the people and those who were scarcely mentioned in the history books. He wanted to try to cast a light on the moments such as the American Revolution from a different angle so that society from that point on would not always know a history that glorified the government. Charles Beard was praised in the Progressive era as the prophet of a new history. I believe that this is extremely similar to Zinn's historical breakthrough. This could be the reason why Zinn uses Beard as a source in his book in order to further support his point. After reading the first several chapters of Edmund Morgan's book, The Birth of the Republic, and got a taste of his government-glorifying tone, I immediately assumed that Morgan would use Beard's evidence as an opposition to his own argument. Morgan is basically saying yes, but about Beard's theory. I think that Morgan's reaction says Beard is almost treating it as an experiment. He made a hypothesis, he tested it, and the results were positive according to some extensive research. However, Morgan argues that you can't just classify human nature like that. It's not a science, and it varies from person to person. Although Beard closely examined the economic interests of the members of the Constitutional Convention, his purpose was not to incriminate these men. Rather, he includes his true intent in his book. Beard posed the question, quote, "Did they represent distinct groups whose economic interests they understood and felt in concrete, definite form through their own personal experience with identical property rights, or were they working merely under the guidance of abstract principles of political science?" on page 73. Therefore, Beard wanted to ultimately reach a conclusion about the convention members as a whole, rather than to prove that the Constitution was made for personal benefit. His studies were vital to a better understanding of our Constitution.